A retired police officer suddenly heard a knock on the door late at night. When he opened the door, he was surprised to see a German shepherd standing there shivering, but even more surprised was the small creature next to the dog. Thomas stood by the stove, stirring a pot of stew that bubbled weakly, the smell of potatoes and thyme barely cutting through the damp chill inside the cabin. Outside, the wind screamed, clawing at the walls like it wanted to tear them down. He didn't bother looking up. It'd been hours since the storm started, and he knew it wasn't letting up anytime soon. His hands moved on autopilot, chopping, stirring, waiting. For what, he wasn't sure anymore. Across the room, Lucas sat hunched in the armchair, knees pulled up to his chest. The boy's eyes were fixed on the floor, tracing the cracks in the wood like they held some secret he couldn't unlock. 8 years old, and he hadn't said more than a handful of words in weeks, not since the accident. Thomas remembered the old Lucas, loud, always running, asking a million questions about bugs or stars or why the sky turned pink at dusk. That kid was gone now, buried under the weight of losing his parents. Thomas's son and daughter-in-law, both cops, both dead in the line of duty. The boy was all he had left, and yet, Lucas felt a million miles away. Thomas set a bowl of stew on the table. "Eat something, kid," he said, his voice rough but quiet. No response, just the wind howling outside, filling the silence. He sat down anyway, staring at the steam curling up from his own bowl. Retirement was supposed to be peaceful. After decades on the force, he'd earned that much. But peace didn't live here, just ghosts. He'd tried everything to reach Lucas, cooking the kid's favorite food and cheese. Burned it the first time, got it right the second, but Lucas only poked at it. Telling stories about the old days, cases he'd cracked, hoping for a spark. Nothing. Walks in the snow, pointing out deer tracks or icicles. Lucas just shuffled along, head down. Thomas saw himself in the boy's stillness, the way grief turned you into a peanut of who you used to be. He'd lost his son, his daughter-in-law, and now it felt like he was losing Lucas too. He didn't know how to fix it, didn't know if he could. The clock ticked past midnight when a sound cut through the storm, a faint scratching at the door. Thomas frowned, setting his spoon down. It wasn't a knock, more like nails dragging across wood. Then came a low, pitiful whine, barely audible over the wind. He grabbed the flashlight from the counter, hesitating. "Stay put," he muttered to Lucas, though the boy didn't even twitch. He cracked the door open, and a blast of icy air hit him. There, half buried in snow, was a German shepherd, ribs poking through its matted fur, its eyes locked on his, desperate but steady. In its mouth hung a small, soaked bundle. Thomas squinted as the dog dropped it at his feet. 2 tiny puppies. Shivering, barely alive, he cursed under his breath. Another mess he didn't need. "Grandpa?" Lucas's voice was so soft, Thomas almost missed it. He turned. The boy was standing now, peering past him at the dogs. "It's got babies." Lucas's eyes flickered with something, fear maybe, or wonder. It was the first time he'd spoken in days. Thomas looked back at the shepherd, then at the puppies whining in the snow. Something in his chest cracked just a little. "All right," he said gruffly, stepping aside. "Get him inside." The cabin felt different with the dogs inside. Thomas dragged an old blanket from the closet and spread it near the fireplace, where the shepherd collapsed, her pups curling into her side. The fire crackled, casting long peanuts across the room. He watched her, wary. She was a stray, probably half-starved, and he didn't trust anything that showed up uninvited, but those eyes, dark, steady, almost human, kept him from kicking her back out into the storm. He muttered to himself, "Just till morning," though he wasn't sure he meant it. Lucas knelt beside the blanket, closer than Thomas expected. The boy's hands hovered over the pups, hesitant. "They're so small," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Thomas grunted, tossing a log into the fire. "Yeah, well, they won't be for long if she's got any say in it." He nodded at the mother dog, who licked her pups with slow, deliberate care. Lucas tilted his head. "What's her name?" Thomas paused, caught off guard. "She's a wild kid, doesn't have one," Lucas frowned, studying her. "She needs a name. She's like a peanut, came out of the dark." He looked up, eyes brighter than they'd been in weeks. Peanut, that's her name. Thomas raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Peanut it is then. Morning came, grey and quiet, the storm finally easing. Thomas brewed coffee, the bitter smell mixing with the faint musk of wet fur. Peanut stayed by the fire nursing her pups, while Lucas watched her like she was the most interesting thing in the world. Thomas couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Something about her nagged at him. Those ears, that stance. He crouched beside her, running a hand along her flank. She didn't flinch. Then he saw it, a jagged scar snaking down her left front leg, faint but unmistakable. His breath hitched. He stood abruptly, heading for the bedroom. Behind the dresser was a box he hadn't touched in months. Old photos, badges, memories he'd buried. He dug through it, fingers trembling until he found it. A faded picture of his son, grinning beside a German shepherd in a canine vest. The same scar marked its leg. Thomas stared, heart pounding. Peanut wasn't just a stray, she'd been his son's partner, a police dog, retired after that last mission went wrong. He'd never asked what happened to her, assumed she'd died. But here she was. He shoved the photo back into the box, slamming it shut. Lucas didn't need to know, not yet. The kid was just starting to thaw. Why drag up the past? Thomas returned to the living room, jaw tight. Lucas was holding a bowl of water for Peanut now, murmuring to her. "You're a good mum," the boy said softly. She lapped at it, tail thumping once. Later, one of the pups, a grey one with a white patch, started whimpering, dragging its hind leg. Thomas sighed, grabbing the first aid kit. "Looks like a sprain. Hold him still, Lucas." The boy obeyed, cradling the pup gently. Thomas wrapped the leg with gauze, his rough hand steady from years of patching up worse. "He'll be fine." Peanut met his gaze, and for a moment he swore she knew him too. The cabin hummed with a new rhythm. Lucas woke early now, shuffling to the fireplace to check on Peanut and her pups before Thomas even poured his coffee. The boy's face lit up when Ash hobbled over, nudging his hand with a wet nose. Snow, the other pup, a scrappy little thing with a knack for trouble, tumbled after, yipping until Lucas scooped her up. Peanut watched it all, stretched out like a queen on her blanket, her calm presence tying the room together. Thomas caught himself staring sometimes, amazed at how fast things had shifted. Lucas wasn't the same kid who'd sat silent for weeks. He talked now, quietly, sure, but it was something. "Peanut's smart," he'd say, or "Ash is tougher than he looks." Thomas just nodded, letting the words settle like snowflakes. But the peace didn't sit right with him. Maybe it was old cop instincts, that itch you can't scratch. One morning he stepped outside to split firewood, the air crisp and still after days of storms. That's when he saw them. Tracks circling the cabin, too big for a fox, too deliberate for a deer. They weren't boot prints, but they weren't animal either. Something, or someone, had been sniffing around. He followed them a few yards, breath fogging in the cold until they vanished into the trees. "Probably nothing," he muttered, but his gut said otherwise. Later, he hauled the axe into the woods, needing more logs. The forest was quiet, pines bowing under leftover snow. He swung hard, the crack of wood echoing when something glinted under a drift. He knelt, brushing the powder aside, and froze. A steel trap, jaws snapped shut, hidden beneath a thin layer of white. Then another, a few feet away. These weren't amateur rigs. Clean welds, heavy springs, the kind built to catch something strong, something trained. Thomas's mind raced. Peanut's scar flashed in his head. Her past as a canine, he knew the game. Poachers, lowlives who hunted retired service dogs, broke them down, sold them to the highest bidder. Cartels, militias, anyone with cash and no morals. Peanut, with her skills and that telltale scent of discipline, was a goldmine to them. He hauled the traps back, dumping them in the shed with a clang. No point scaring Lucas yet, the kid was just starting to breathe again. But Thomas kept his shotgun closer that night, leaning it against the wall instead of Peanut trotted over, nudging them apart like a referee. Thomas almost smiled, almost. Then he saw it. A Peanut moving between the trees, too tall for a deer, too quiet for anything good. He set the mug down, slow, eyes narrowing. "Lucas?" he called, voice steady but firm. "Inside, now." The boy froze, stick still in hand, but obeyed, herding the pups with Peanut trailing behind. Thomas stayed put, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. Maybe he'd imagined it. Maybe not. Either way, he knew one thing for sure. Whatever was out there wasn't here by accident. Peanut's past had followed her, and now it was circling them all. Thomas wasn't taking chances. After spotting that Peanut in the trees, he turned the cabin into a quiet fortress. He showed Lucas how to spot a trap, look for disturbed snow, a glint of metal. "Step light," he said, pointing at the ground. "You see one, you yell for me." The boy nodded, wide-eyed but focused. Thomas taught him a sharp whistle, too. 2 blasts for trouble, 3 if he had to run. "Don't freeze up," he added, ruffling Lucas's hair. "You're tougher than you think." Inside, he sharpened the axe, checked the shotgun's shells, and kept Peanut close. She paced more now, ears twitching at sounds he couldn't hear. The attack came late, under a moonless sky. Thomas was dozing in his chair when a flare burst outside, painting the walls red through the curtains. Then a shrill whistle, ultrasonic, piercing, sent Peanut and the pups into a frenzy. She barked, deep and frantic, while Ash and Snow whimpered, scrambling under the couch. Thomas bolted up, grabbing the gun. "Lucas, down!" he shouted. The boy hit the floor, covering his ears as glass shattered, a rock through the window, followed by boots crunching snow outside. Voices barked orders, low and clipped. Professionals. He fired a warning shot through the broken pane, the blast echoing. Peanut scattered, but the whistle screamed again, and Peanut lunged at the door, claws scraping. "Stay, girl!" Thomas yelled, but chaos took over. A figure loomed outside, tossing something, a smoke canister, into the cabin. Grey haze flooded the room. Lucas coughed, scrambling toward the back. Thomas fired again, blind, then felt a sick lurch. Lucas was gone, the rear door banging open. He cursed, charging after him, but the smoke stung his eyes, slowing him down. Lucas ran, heart pounding, the whistle still shrieking in his head. Snow crunched under his boots until it gave way. He yelped, tumbling into a shallow pit, ankle twisting. He tried to climb out, but the walls were slick, and panic clawed at him. "Grandpa!" he screamed, voice breaking. Above, boots thudded closer, then stopped. A dark shape loomed. Peanut. She barked, sharp and fierce, darting past the pit. Men shouted, cursing as she weaved through them, snapping at heels, drawing them off. She was fast, deliberate, like she'd done this before. Thomas stumbled through the woods, smoke clearing from his lungs. A bark cut the night. Peanut's signal, steady and clear. He followed it, shotgun raised, until he found the pit. Lucas looked up, pale and shaking. "I'm here, kid," Thomas rasped, hauling him out. Peanut burst from the trees, panting, herding them back toward cover. The poachers' shouts faded. They'd lost the trail. For now. Huddled behind a fallen log, Thomas caught his breath. Lucas clung to Peanut, who licked his face. "She saved me," the boy whispered. Thomas nodded, voice low. "She saved your folks too, once. Canine through and through. That last job, big explosion, she made it out. Found us." Lucas stared, then hugged her tight. "You're not a dog. You're family." Thomas gripped the gun, eyes on the dark. The fight wasn't over, but they'd made it this far. Together. Spring crept in slow, melting the snow into muddy patches around the cabin. The air softened, carrying the chirp of birds and the faint buzz of life waking up. Thomas stepped onto the porch one morning, coffee steaming in his mug, and watched wildflowers poke through the ground, yellow and stubborn, like they'd fought to get there. Inside, the pups scrambled over each other by the door, Ash's limp barely noticeable now, snow nipping at his tail. Peanut lounged nearby, her coat glossier, eyes sharp but calm. The forest was quiet these days. No tracks, no Peanuts. Whatever hunted them had moved on, or given up. Lucas bounded out, barefoot despite the chill, a grin splitting his face. "Peanut, come on," he hollered, darting into the yard. She trotted after him, steady as ever, while the pups tumbled behind. Thomas leaned on the railing, watching the boy trip over a root, roll down a slope, and pop up laughing, loud, wild, like a kid again. Lucas grabbed a stick, waving it until Peanut play-bowed, then took off, the pups yipping in pursuit. Thomas chuckled, a low rumble. The kid had ditched that old silence like a coat he'd outgrown. He'd started wearing his dad's beat-up baseball cap too, tugged low over his eyes when he and Peanut roamed the woods. Didn't talk about the past much, but Thomas figured he didn't need to. The cap said enough. That night, they sprawled by the fireplace, embers glowing soft. Lucas sat cross-legged, Ash dozing in his lap, Snow chewing a sock she'd swiped from the laundry. Peanut stretched out, head resting on Thomas's knee, her warmth seeping into him. He scratched behind her ears, feeling the steady rise of her breath. "You did good, girl," he murmured. "Thanks for coming back." Lucas glanced up, cradling Ash closer. "She didn't come back for us," he said, voice quiet but sure. "She never left." Thomas met his eyes, saw something steady there, trust maybe, or just knowing. He nodded, letting the words hang. The cabin felt full now, not just with bodies but with something harder to name. Lucas yawned, leaning against Thomas's chair, the pups piled around him like a messy blanket. Peanut sighed, content. Outside, the forest loomed, dark and vast, but it didn't press in anymore. The fire popped, a small, stubborn light holding the night at bay. Thomas looked at them. Lucas, Peanut, Ash, Snow. 5 banged-up souls who'd stitched themselves into something whole. A family, rough around the edges but real. Next morning, Lucas stood on the porch, cap tilted back, watching a hawk circle overhead. Peanut flanked him, Ash and Snow wrestling at his feet. Thomas joined them, hands in his pockets. "What's next, kid?" he asked. Lucas shrugged, grinning. "Dunno. Stick with these guys, I guess." Thomas smirked, clapping his shoulder. The hawk swooped low, then climbed free against the sky. Down here, the 5 of them stayed put, rooted together. The dark was still out there, somewhere, but in the cabin, the fire kept burning, and that was enough.